Hi everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today. I'm Karen Haig. I'm Head of Partnerships at Edify, and I am delighted to introduce our speaker today, Adam Hopewell. I'm going to try and do his experience justice in a couple of short sentences. Adam is an expert in the science and strategy of talent system architecture and decision making, and he spent the past 2 decades living and working in China, India, the Middle East, and the USA, specializing in building scalable, data-driven talent architectures that fuse behavioral science, analytics, and design thinking. And he has many qualifications and honors, too many for me to talk through without taking up too much time in this webinar. So without further ado, Adam, I'm going to hand you over and I'm going to let you talk us through how we can orchestrate our workforces for the AI era.
All righty. Thank you most kindly to Karen. And thank you to the fine folk at Edify. I think they're doing some really vital work in providing education support around the implementation of AI on a global basis. And it's delighted to be partnering with them today. So thank you to Anita, Karen, for being in the support roles here and setting us up to talk. But let's with no further ado launch into some of the meat and veg, so to speak. So today's session, what are we going to be looking at? We're at the art of workforce planning and with a special focus on agencies. This is a me. It's a slightly younger me. I think the hair's slightly darker at that point. As mentioned, I have worked over the last 25 years, like 4 years India, 4 years China, 7 years in the Middle East, and the last 10 years here in the US. Got an MBA, got master's level qualifications from Judge Business School in organizational design and development and learning and development, and a specialist in people analytics. Um, in fact, yesterday, I even got selected for the T100 yet again, which is the Talent 100, the top 100 folks in talent. So there's a lot of buzz going on LinkedIn yesterday around that. Yeah, and I even used the rather English phrase that I was very chuffed to receive the award, and that got a lot of commentary on the using of the word chuffed. For those who aren't aware of it, for those who may not be British, that just means rather pleased. So I am also chuffed to be here with you today, and let's get into the actual content. So, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. Thank you for joining us for what is, to me, what I think one of the most important and dynamic discussions happening across all companies, but especially for creative and professional services right now. I have worked for creative agencies in the past. Directly after university, I spent a little while at Grey Incorporated, and then in Iran, strangely enough, I supported an advertising agency called Darvak. But I won't class myself as an expert in agencies. Typically, I work in elite high-tech companies, recent specifically in AI companies. So if you do have any inputs, particularly from the agency side, if the agency stalwarts here who have deeper insights, please do feel ready to share. Each section, as we're going to be going through three main sections, we'll have a engage section in which we'll engage around the topic. We'll have what I call the study section, which is the content. And then there's an activate section where I'd love people to be involved and contributing their thoughts for the end of each of the three sections. So, as I say, over the last 5 years, I've been working in applied AI. It's undoubtedly one of the most impactful and transformative technologies that I've ever encountered. And I've been writing extensively about its impact on the world of work. And especially a concept which we're going to go into a lot today, which I think is really important, which is the concept of orchestration. And you'll see during the presentation, there's quite a lot of content really that's linked thematically to the concept of orchestration and how to bring together the harmony of digital and human intelligences. So AI isn't just changing what we create, it's changing how we allocate investments in capabilities to decide who and what creates the outputs we most need and most desire to deliver. And today we're going to be reimagining workforce planning, not as old school headcount management, but as capability orchestration, orchestrating the capabilities between human and digital intelligences. So Most workforce planners still look like this old school org chart on the left. But in the last 18 months in particular, the org chart has become more like a neural network where human and digital intelligences interact dynamically. In this world, the challenge is now how do we plan, price, and deliver work in this new reality? According to my understanding, at least in agencies, there are four forces colliding on a daily basis. You are under pressure to deliver faster, cheaper, and smarter while keeping the creativity, the magic, and the trust with your clients intact. Provisioning the capability that addresses that paradox is what we'll be tackling today. So, when roles are blurring, tasks are automating, and skill relevant cycles have shrunk from what was years to months, we now need to look through a new lens. Workforce planning needs to evolve from counting headcount and people to a system which dynamically orchestrates human and digital capabilities. No, during this presentation, I'll mostly be using the term digital intelligence rather than artificial intelligence. They are fairly like mutually usable at this point, but I actually prefer digital intelligence because I don't think the intelligence we are dealing with is actually artificial. It's just non-organic. I'm not the only one thinking this. Like people like Elon Musk have also commented repeatedly that artificial intelligence may itself be a term that will age out. And digital intelligence seems like a good replacement. But during the presentation, they'll be used relatively interchangeably. Ooh, we actually have the first the comments and questions here. Are organizations really changing their structures to be more fluid? I'm seeing little shifts in structures. Um, Yeah, like organizations I've been working with have definitely been moving towards more holonic or fluidic structures. That tends to be in the high tech and especially in the applied AI industry. But I think that this is something that's going to come to all industries over time. And if you're seeing little shifts at this point, then what today's session is about is preparing for when those shifts do come. Because I think like a tide coming in, you could be like Newt and sit there and try and insist that the tides are held back. But I think these tides are going to come in pretty much across the board, across all industries, and especially in the kind of creative agency industry. I think this kind of thinking is really helpful at this point. So, how to orchestrate your workforce for the AI era? We're going to be spending the next 41 minutes walking through three movements. The learning outcomes that I have scheduled in for today are as follows. Number one, we're going to be looking at a little bit of a frog, just one moment. We're going to be looking at capability, a way to see workflows through the lens of human and AI intelligences. The focus of that section will be on understanding and applying a six intelligences framework, which I'm going to introduce to you. We're going to be looking at pure human intelligence, amplified human intelligence, augmented human intelligence, applied digital intelligence, agentic digital intelligence, and pure digital intelligence. The key concept we'll be exploring really is what I'm calling capability orchestration, choosing the right intelligence as the player for the work at each part of the symphony. Second, we're going to be looking at capacity. So this is we're going to be looking at a decision model. Some of you may be familiar with this one already, but we're going to be deep diving really the build, borrow, buy, and bot decision model, and how we can look about capacity and how to allocate seats effectively to those different types of capacity building. So the focus is workforce provisioning and capacity sourcing strategies. And the key concept there really is capacity orchestration, selecting how to provision and balance capability across time and scale. And thirdly, we're going to be looking at the concept of collaboration. And this is going to have a micro roadmap essentially to make AI-enabled workforce both ethical and effective. The focus is lightweight governance principles to maintain rhythm and trust in human and AI stroke digital intelligence collaboration. And the key concept being collaboration orchestration, ensuring the tempo of innovation doesn't outrun culture, creativity, or conscience. So today, aim is we're going to be looking to map work, look at capabilities. We're going to be looking at align capacity, and we're going to be looking to safeguard creativity. That's the plan for the next, for about 40 odd minutes. Anything on the chat front? All right, I'm seeing a thumbs up. That's good. Feel free, do chip in there. I have it live here, and I'm happy to address any of your considerations as we go through. I love to get some audience interactivity going. So, as with Andrew's comments, I would lead in that if your org chart hasn't already started changing since ChatGPT, what, November 2021, 2022, then congratulations, but you may be leading in a museum. Let's begin our first movement discovering how to map multiple intelligences to the world of work. And you'll see that these icons are reused as we map these concepts through. So work used to live inside job descriptions. I actually have a hate relationship. I won't even say a love-hate relationship, but a hate relationship with job descriptions. To me, they are laundry lists of activities and responsibilities, a anachronistic document from the industrial age. Inside the companies I work with, typically we use prioritized technical competencies or prioritized capability statements these days, even job search or in posting for jobs and inside the organization as well. It's prioritized capabilities that we focus on rather than just tasks and activities. Today, we need to look at the outputs flow across humans, co-pilots, and autonomous systems. And the question is no longer who will do the task as much as it is which intelligence is best suited for the tasks. So we keep talking about AI adoption, automation, reskilling, but to me, these are symptoms and not structure. What can really help is having a common notation for work, one that describes the different types of human and digital intelligence. And so that's why I'm going to start today by sharing the 6 intelligence framework that I use and have used with a number of my clients and their organizations to give us what I classify as that notation. Do I advocate getting rid of job descriptions altogether? Well, the last organization I worked with, Behaviox, applied AI company, I was there for over 5 years. We didn't have a single job description in the entire company. So, yes, as heading the HR and talent function there on a global basis, I was instrumental in us not using job descriptions at all. Everything was done on the basis of what we call ideal or intelligent talent profiles, ITPs, and those combined knowledge, skills, experience, prioritize top 5, technical capability or prioritize technical capability statements, top 5, and then values alignment statements, top 5. I'm a big believer in the use of the Pareto principle here, like the laundry list of 30 odd items on a job description. Typically, if you give it enough thought and work with this, then you can bring that down to what really is moving the needle. And I think focusing on what moves the needle as our work changes fluidically around us is far more important than just looking at a laundry list of tasks and responsibilities. I do have examples I could share of a capability JD, but that will be not sunk into that presentation. I hope that overview gives you a little bit of inside English. So next slides, we're going to look one by one at the following intelligences. Sorry, I just got a comment in from Andrew there. Removing JDs from organizations will make 4/5 of the audience recall in horror. Absolutely, as they should, because in fact, I was speaking yesterday at the Hacking HR Summit for Talent Management, Strategic Talent Management. And yes, when the question of removal of JDs came up, there was definitely a little recoil here and there. and effective talent acquisition systems, which is one of my strengths and fortes of building and architecting those. Yes, there's a lot of traditionalists who would be horrified by it. I don't care. Organizations I've worked with have seen far greater impact on talent density, on quality of hire, of return on talent investment. When you move away from job descriptions, you put them away, it kind of can still be used in performance management, but away from the typical frontline activity. Christine's giving us a yes. Yay. Alrighty. So we're back to our intelligences. First of all, intelligence one, pure HI, the composer. Number two, we're going to be looking at amplified HI. And I'm going to stick with my musical themes here. We're going to call this the amplified soloist. Intelligence three, augmented human intelligence. This is the duet. Number four, applied digital intelligence, or the section musician. Number five, agentic DI, or the ensemble. And number six, pure DI, the automated symphony. Now, it's possible to put different labels on this, and maybe the granularity of this will change over time. But I'm just finding this as a useful framework as I'm having discussions around workforce capabilities to be able to look at which capabilities are best generated by each of these different types of intelligence or combinations of these types of intelligences. So, number one, the pure HI, the composer. So, pure human intelligence is the composer's moment, when outputs need to come from pain, joy, or lived cultural connection. While AI systems of the future may be able to emulate these, they probably won't be able to feel them. You reach for pure HI when there's emotional truth at stake, founding a brand, crafting a lived story, leading through an emotional crisis. We use it when it makes sense, when you need to make sense of things, not just make outputs, and especially when no data precedent exists. Obviously, the greater the data precedent, the greater the capabilities of our digital intelligences. Pure human intelligence can be slow, it can be messy, but it's profoundly human. And to me, there's a number of reasons why that's irreplaceable. Number two, amplified HI. This is where we use AI to amplify, but not to replace creativity. The human tends to write the verse, and the tool makes it louder and cleaner. Maybe we're thinking around some forms of copywriting here, design variations, research summaries. We use it when the melody is already written, but we need to reach the audience faster and cleaner. It's how we free time up for higher value human judgment. And augmented human intelligence. This is probably my current default. So a lot of the work I do at the moment sits in what I classify as augmented human intelligence. It's collaboration. It's think advanced co-pilots. It's where you and the system bounce ideas, adjust prompts, feed in new data, get inspired back. Particularly strong for things like brainstorming, testing headlines, optimizing creativity in flight. Most valuable when the end is unknown, but the discovery process itself has commercial or creative value. The duet keeps both sides learning from each other as they iterate in tandem. So that's our first three cluster of human intelligences. I'll just check in on the chat. Question on the QA. If org chart changes from pyramid to diamond, who will win the future generation of leaders? How can we educate future talent if AI is threatening to make the redundant? Ooh, talent pipelining, especially from a youth perspective, is a giant topic in itself. I'm not going to dive into that right at this moment, but there's a lot, especially legal firms, have had a lot of collaboration and connections with legal firms who are really concerned about not bringing in their interns, not bringing in the future talent pipeline that's necessary here. This is a dynamic that's being addressed by organizations on live. No one really has the right answer for this at the moment because the cost effectiveness versus the future pipelining is there's a struggle going on between these. We will find an equilibrium. We will find a point where both are balanced to a certain extent. But I haven't seen that equilibrium be established at this point so far, Anita. Next, intelligence. So next intelligence, applied digital intelligence, or the section musician. This is where it performs explicitly as written. No improvisation, no fatigue. Applied digital intelligence shines where the music is written and compliance is key. It makes use of custom data, so it's great for QA, media optimization, and reporting. It's where automation gives you a dependable rhythm. And for example, in the last 5 years, the company I've been working with, Behaviox, essentially works in the applied AI or applied digital intelligence space. It works with major banks all over the world and provides regulatory compliance monitoring of communication data. So this is very structured. It's exactly set. It can't afford to hallucinate. It has to be trained with fine tuning and RAGs that are specific to its context. This is very much controlled, or as I say, applied digital intelligence. Next one is agentic AI, a big topic. This is meant to be the year of agentic AI. We've seen that in a number of instances, but also I think there's been a bit of a hype cycle around this. We will see more and more of this, and it's what I classify as the ensemble. So this is where orchestration as a concept truly begins to come to life. It's not one AI playing a single instrument. It's an ensemble of agentic systems that can interpret intent, adjust to context, and coordinate not just from an interaction, a human in the loop perspective, but coordinate independently together. So at the moment, you can think of automated media platforms, CRM tools, analytics agents, all responding to a shared goal, and each one adapting to each other's rhythm. The magic here really is in the relationship, humans defining score and tempo, and the digital ensemble performing the complex harmonies of delivery. This is digital intelligence playing as a team, autonomous, but not independent. It learns across instruments, enabling cross-system intelligences. And when the ensemble plays well, the scaling feels effortless. Or at least that's the ideal. And the last of the intelligence we're looking at here, oh, by the way, number 6, pure DI. Now, this is the automated symphony. This is the full automation layer, the perpetual rhythm section of the enterprise. Doesn't improvise, doesn't rest, maintains tempo, security, precision at scale. You turn to pure DI when the goal is endurance rather than expression. And it tends to function as a hum beneath the orchestra, the silent system that keeps all other intelligence in time. We don't see that much exposure to this at this point, even in my work fields, but we can see it's on the horizon and coming. All right, so that's our 6 intelligences kind of scoped out a little bit. Let's just have a quick look, see if there's any questions on that in the chat. For the first time, every gen has something to learn from one another. Why? Sure, there's not pairing experience with digital natives one-on-one. Absolutely, Christine, love it. The issue that's faced with this is cost structure, essentially. That if something can be done, for example, in the legal example, if you can have an AI system that can do research briefs just as well as an intern, then why would you bring in or a junior? Then why would you pay to have that intern or junior in place? The investment has to be clear that the investment is worthwhile, and that's what organizations are struggling with a bit at the moment. But I believe very strongly that they will see that their investment is a necessity, and therefore they will return to making it. A number of them have backed away from this, saying, "No, we're not going to invest in the youth." But my strong feeling is that they're going to start to see that, just as you say, a pairing, digital natives working directly with those systems is going to be seen as an effective way of creating a talent pipeline for the future. Alrighty, so having covered our 6 intelligences, let's look a little bit about some steps on how capability and value are delivered. So we're going to have 4 steps I'm going to bring up here as a practical kind of roadmap for how to think about capability. So I'd say the first step really is considering the business anchor. And if you want to be practical about this, let's identify a current priority objective for your agency. It gives you a unifying score that the orchestra is playing to. Everything else should map up to this. It's the why the investment is being made. Number 2, the key output. This is the tangible deliverable that directly affects typically the financial outcome. This is where we'll start from one clear line of music, which everything will be orchestrated towards. Step three is traditional. We're going to be looking at a traditional workflow using human intelligence only. From that, we can look at the priority output and map the workflow. And then one of the examples I'm going to give you here, we're going to look at a traditional workflow, and then I'm going to bring up a reimagined orchestrated workflow using both human intelligence and digital intelligence. I think this is worked with a lot of organizations and have done this too many times to count now, where we take the existing workflow, the traditional workflow, and then we look to see what are the capabilities that are required within that workflow and which intelligences best suit the delivery of those capabilities. So I'm going to try and flesh this out into a more concrete example. So if we'll look at step one and step two on this slide. Step one, business anchor, priority objective for the agency. For example, could be increasing gross margin by improving campaign efficiency without reducing creative quality. Okay, so we've got a fairly bold business anchor, but a specific one here. From that, what would we get as a key output? Well, just as an example here, potentially delivering campaign strategies that maximize performance per creative hour. So if this is what we're focusing on, we're really looking at campaign strategies. So we need a workflow that generates campaign strategies. What I'm going to do on the next slide is a fairly basic, and I'm sure a number of you here would say, oh, you're missing this and missing that. Okay, I'm looking at just basically a 6-stage workflow using only human intelligence that could be used to create campaign strategies. And here we are. So I'm just going to give you a moment to have a quick scan across this. So delivering campaign strategies that maximize performance per creative hour, 6 stages, descriptions, and potential limitations of that workflow. Pause just a moment to see if there's any inputs on chat regarding this as a traditional workflow. No. Okay, then I'm going to move to what I would say is a reimagined workflow. So this is the reimagined orchestrated workflow. You see the stages have changed slightly, descriptions, and the value add as well. And for each of these, I'd say that we can select from our portfolio of 6 intelligences, which would be what I classify as the dominant intelligence, which intelligences really serve that task the best. So hopefully if we do have folks in chat. Yes, we've got a fair few participants here. I can bring up what I think would be the dominant intelligences in each of these stages. But just for example, could anyone into stage 1, intelligent briefing, what would you classify as those 6 would be the dominant intelligences or dominant intelligence used for that, if we're thinking of a workflow of the future, an AI native workflow? Pop it into chat, number 1 through 6. I will wait until I see a single number before we move on. If no one puts a number in, you put a number in. We're already at past, so we've got to keep moving. We've got a lot of content still to cover. Oh, come on, someone. Da, 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 da. I'm stubborn as an ox with these kind of things. I'll just sit here. Okay, Ash should come in with number 4. So he's saying that essentially that's applied AI, and not time for him to explain why he thinks that, but let's see what Adam put in here. Yes, I'd say that this is a combination between AMP HI and applied digital intelligence, just as you said, Ash, there. And for the sake of time, I will bring up the other intelligences. Ash is relieved to get one right. Tick box, don't worry, sir. We're all learning in this process. You've got to be willing to make mistakes. You've got to be willing to put out ideas, test hypotheses, and see what works inside your organizations. It could be that the intelligent briefing in one agency uses different intelligences from another agency just because of the culture of their creative process. So you've got to be willing to experiment, but this at least gives you some kind of framework in which to verbalize and talk about how you're going to be doing this. So insight generation, let's say, is primarily org HI. I use AMP HI as well. Concept ideation, org HI again. channel design, applied DI, creative production, applied DI, and continuous operation, essentially leaning into agentic DI, and maybe even pure DI at this point as well. So the point of this exercise is not replacing people, but it's to rescore the system from a musical perspective. And note, even here, 4 of the 6 workflow stages still require human intelligence. Only what, number 4 and number 6 lean into entirely digital intelligences. And of the 12 dominant intelligence proposed, 6 of those are human intelligences. This is the start of moving from solo performance to what I classify as a true orchestra. In this new workflow, we're still playing the same song, campaign strategy, but now every section knows when they need to come in, how loud to play, and when to hand off the melody. Or at least that's the idea. All right, so we've covered section 1 on capability. I hope that's given you a little bit of a framework, or at least some food for thought and food for expression in your discussions on capability. We're going to be bringing this all together towards the end. Second section is on capacity. So that's applying the bot, build, borrow, and buy model. And that ordering is actually now quite intentional ordering for the considerations here. As we can't afford to build an orchestra of full-timers for every song, every capability we bring costs time, money, and management. Client demands change faster than hiring cycles can possibly respond to. So agencies have got to decide which capabilities to automate, which to develop, which to rent, and which to own. And even if you could find all the capabilities all of your projects need, would it be wise to keep them all tuned and waiting to sing or to play? And if not, then the question becomes which instruments are played primarily by machines, which can be played with cross-training, which can we borrow for a performance, and which do we hire virtuosos for and keep on full-time books, so to speak. For every capability decision, there's a trade-off between speed, cost, and control. Now, a number of you will have seen this pyramid before, and you'll be saying, Adam, isn't what control? Isn't that meant to be quality? The trade-off is quality here, isn't it? Well, I would push back to you to say that in the age of AI, quality isn't the scarce variable that control is. With digital and AI augmentation, consistent quality output is actually increasingly accessible. AI can generate polished work fast, especially if it's working off large data sets of exemplification of that. But what's harder is maintaining control over your IP integrity, who owns what, ownership over brand coherence, staying true to the creative DNA, keeping control over cultural nuance, avoiding ethical or reputational errors. So while quality can now be scaled to a certain extent through tools, it's control that differentiates high-performing agency activity. It's the executive leverage variable. So speed and cost being operational levers and control being the governance section here. And you can sacrifice control through outsourcing or full automation to gain speed or to cut cost, but that increases strategic and operational and reputational risk. And you can retain control through curation and human oversight, but that slows you down and raises cost. So to me, this is a more accurate version of the true modern trade-off triangle. So in a live performance, pretty much something always changes. There's a new tempo, a new tone, a new audience. The same happens with client projects. But if you can recompose your capability mixed song, then you can stay as profitable and relevant as possible. I'm assuming that most of you will have come across some version of this model before. It's a very typical model in workforce planning used to turn constraint into composition. Each capability you need has to be provisioned in typically one of 4 ways. There are extended models, was a 7B model. In fact, I think the largest I ever saw was a 12B model. But let's try and keep to prioritize concepts. And I think the 4B probably covers the majority of instances. Bot through automation, build internally, borrow temporarily, or buy via recruitment or talent acquisition. In the next few slides, we'll be looking at when to use each and how to create a good blend of them. So A, bot, encode and automate the capability. Now, bot kind of is our drum machine, has perfect tempo, infinite stamina. And this is one of the ways that we can liberate humans from repetition and tasks and allow them to focus more on composition. As we see here, anchored in applied DI, agentic DI, and pure DI typically, and focused on automated reporting, campaign optimization, scheduling, compliance workflows. B, build. So this is investing to grow capability internally. Build is your slow movement. It's deliberate, it's developmental, it's deep. Use it for core capabilities that define agency sound. It's how you mature pure and amplified human intelligence inside your culture. Examples: creative direction, brand narratives, leadership capabilities, ethical governance. C is borrow. So that's renting the capability you need when you need it. So this is your guest soloist used when the score needs them. Bring in a specialist when you have a requirement for a unique instrument or a unique capability over a certain time period. This lets you flex capacity with additional capability, hopefully without bloating the orchestra or overloading the cost structure. So freelancers for campaign surges, specialized data scientists, I see a lot of use in freelancers at the moment, and JV partner experts would be examples of such. And the last of the models, should we buy? This is secure, proven capability on a more permanent basis. This is the hiring of a performer who would join the orchestra full time. Comparatively expensive, so they do need to deliver the excellence and continuity when the risk of failure is too high to risk the experimentation. Examples: hiring a seasoned head of partnerships, acquiring boutique data firm, licensing an AI suite. Notice buying isn't only about hiring, but it's also about buying. That's why I want you thinking on capability. And it can also be licensing an AI suite could be a buy decision. So whenever we need a cluster or a single capability or a cluster of capabilities, we need to be looking at which of those four models are most appropriate for the business need. And I'm going to now map those onto the intelligences to show where they typically occur in the work and the experience I've been doing. So we'll see typically that bot is applied around the digital intelligence cluster, where repeatability rules. It naturally strongly fits to the digital intelligence types. Build is where human judgment defines value, so it's strongest in support of human intelligence. Borrows where flexibility is key, so it can be viable for both human intelligence and digital intelligence. And buy when quality and continuity matter the most, relevant for both hiring and, as I said, purchasing. So when we combine this, we start thinking about human digital intelligence and the 4B model. We can see that you can start to see ways to design a workforce as an orchestra, not as an org chart. Now, this is fairly stretched thinking for a number of more traditional mindsets, but I strongly urge you to start thinking along these lines to see whether that can suit and help your business. Alrighty. So providing capacity provisioning, we're also going to look at a series of steps that I think that help with this. Again, starting with business anchors, then adding in a layer here of market realities. So that's scenario planning to consider threats and constraints in particular. So we start by naming the few outcomes that truly matter. For example, in the next 6 months, if you want to practically do this, what are the few outcomes that really matter in the next 6 months? Maybe revenue growth, client wins, margin lift. These become the tempo and key. Okay, beware of setting vague or vanity objectives, and always try and make sure that there's a metric which can be used to measure these. Once those anchors are in place, stress test them against scenario plannings for best, base, and worst case, economic shifts, AI regulation, talent churn, so that your orchestra is able to flex, not crack. Dangers here, ignoring the constraints and external volatility. And we can metricize this with things like number of documented scenarios, probability weightings completed. Next, looking at the key outputs. So for each of the top priority objectives, identify the highest priority outputs involved. Converting each anchor into a tangible, measurable output, expressed as dynamic capability statements ideally, which have an action, an object, and an impact. And we can metricize this through the percentage of outputs and defined definitions of done. Then we can move to reimagining the workflow, the orchestrated workflow, arranging the parts, mapping your current human-only workflow. If you are, maybe you've already got an orchestrated workflow, but looking at the existing workflow and then thinking about how best to adapt that, as you saw earlier, into being a combined intelligence workflow. Pitfalls here tend to be automating the wrong tasks or duplicating effort. And the metrics can be things like lead time reduction in the old versus new workflows. Step 5 leads us into quantifying the types of intelligence most needed. So estimating the mix of intelligent models each load must carry. Where do you need to do the hiring for virtuoso humans or AI systems? Where do you need consistent digital rhythm? So the pitfall here tends to be guessing capacity without real volume data. And the metric would typically be a documented human intelligence, digital intelligence ratio per workflow stage. Next, quantifying the types of data of the intelligence needed as a delta. So we've said that basically we've mapped out what our priorities are. We've looked at the capabilities required. We've looked at the intelligence most appropriate for those capabilities. Now, what do we already have? How do the capabilities we already have map on to what we need? So this is where we establish typically a delta between the two. Treating skills and capacity gaps as the same thing can be a pitfall here. And the metric is typically the number of gaps identified by the estimated hours to close is a simple metric that's helpful here. But this will allow you to start to build up more dynamic workforce planning, which then leads you to making those workforce planning decisions for the capabilities you need and the capacity that you need, because you've now identified both, selecting from the 4B provisioning options in order to close the gaps for the next 6 months. And the last stage is what I classify as applying your governance principles. This is checkpoints to retune, to make sure as we are evolving the workflows themselves, that ethics, experience, and effectiveness are focused on. The governance isn't bureaucracy. I don't think it's bureaucracy. It should be your metronome, really. So that's treating governance as a one-off compliance exercise is the pitfall. And the metric to be used to measure this is the number of governance reviews completed per quarter and potentially the percent of adjustments that needed to be made. So from these, we turn these 8 steps to workforce planning from HR paperwork into orchestration. When done right, and this is never done right at its first attempt, don't worry, it becomes, at its best point, a living score of capability and capacity that can be adapted in real time. And that brings a lot of financial and commercial advantages. All right, we're down to 10:45, so I've got to keep moving a little bit, but we do have a kind of interactive part here. Let's see if we can step up. So, choosing capacity provisioning with the right intelligence. I'm going to give you a bit of a case example. We're going to try and do this relatively quickly, but I'd love you to engage and to give me some of the thoughts here. So, you have just landed a super exciting new client project for MacroHard, the company. The brief. Either A, deliver a new AI-powered product launch campaign in 2 weeks, or B, deliver an AI-powered existing product optimization campaign in 2 weeks. Okay, because of time constraints, let's maybe just only focus on A, delivering a new AI-powered product launch campaign in 2 weeks. The twist, your orchestra has only limited seats, so that's the capacity side, and each seat can only hold one priority capability. So what do you already have? You already have Joe, who is our fresh graduate in history as an intern. He's ready to help out and contribute as effectively as possible. And strangely enough, you have Mo. Mo is our grumpy account manager with 30 years experience. So you've got 2 human intelligence assets sat there. You've also got, what I'm allocating here is you've got the potential for up to 2 builds, 2 borrows, 1 buy, and 3 bots. Alrighty, so we won't have time to basically map out the entirety of how you would spend each of those capacity seats. But what I would like you to think through is what is your priority here, and what would be your first capacity, what would be your first capability target, and how would you assess what kind of capacity would you put to that? So are you looking primarily for what is the activity, the capacity, capability you're looking for, and then what capability would best map onto that? I have actually thought this through, and I worked in a augmented human intelligence format last night or yesterday with GPT-5. It was to see what GPT-5 would come up with this challenge, and that's on the next slide. But in the chat, can anyone think really around the priority capability, and then how they would provide that as a capacity? Which of these seats they would use to supply to that? I'll give you a count. Okay, I'm going to play music just for 30 seconds to let people think that through.
To my waist, still send me with a clip. Big glass of the Bombay, take a little sip like vintage stick, still blast from the past. Gold rings quick when I burst in the clouds. Just stepped into the building, show a little face, and I'm back on the road like Dubai trips on a jet plane, bar railings for the watch and the neck chain. Don't want drinks when I land, I'm a sip of chai tea, cause a fly give me neck pain. Mumbai go for the while she's smiling. I had a notch on a bed frame. Italian suede in the seats of a brand new motor. Quick little squirt of the Hagerwood ooh for Mozambique. Got a tailor suit with the brogues on feet. I'm in Casablanca, blind Jack, I render with the AC blood in the driver's seat. Talk to the platinum hands in my timepiece, boy, cause the face ain't listening. Shining, glistening, look at these diamonds dance while I stepped inside of the building. Changes swinging on my neck, gold rings on my fingers, some on my wrist. Tucked into my waist, still send me with a clip. Big glass of the Bombay, take a little sip like vintage stick, still blast from the past. Gold rings click when I pass in the clouds. Just stepped into the building, show a little face, and I'm back on the road like quick neck down to the strip, got gold in my wrist and a side bag pack full of clips. Strapping up.
I'd love to give more time on this, but I'm seeing a clock with only 11 minutes before the end of the session. So I'm going to jump back in. But really, if you're going to make the most out of these kind of sessions, like really thinking these things through is really valuable, I think. So let's see what we've got in the chat. Nick, 2, borrow before building. Okay, so he's leaning into the fact that you borrow before you train up for capabilities, cost effectiveness and time being the leverages. I'd say he's leaning into there. Ailish, short-term piece of work. Number 2, build, and number 3, automate. Okay. Yes. I'm not quite clear on what capabilities that we're looking to build directly here. But let's look at the next slide, because at that point we've mapped out the capabilities and moved that across the system. So with Joe, Mo, and our own contributions, what are we doing? Let's see. Okay, back to the slides. All right, so this is the recommendation that I spent maybe 10 minutes working with ChatGPT on this, and this is what they came out with. They said, or we came out with. So build 2 seats using with Joe and Mo. Priority capabilities being strategic narrative design for Mo, cultural story framing and prompt crafting for Joe, and then we've got the mapping of why that fits. If we're going to use both of the borrow seats there, then potentially the capacity we're looking for, the capabilities are generative design variations, cross-channel go-to-market planning, and the capacity would be through an AI design specialist. These are the way we would hire in those capabilities. If we look at the buying section, we have 1 seat to buy. What would be most useful here in capability? The creative direction and concept integration, prospectively. So potentially buying in a creative director. But with 2 weeks timeline, like is buy even a practical consideration at this point? Probably not in reality. This would have to obviously be provisioned beforehand on the buy side. And the bot, applied DI systems for asset production at scale, performance tracking, iteration, versioning, and localized automation to keep tempo high whilst producing. I think this is a fairly extreme example, like especially with only a 2-week time frame, it kind of rules out buy to a certain extent, and build can't be responded to in that much time. This is why you need to be proactively trying to get on the front foot, thinking through these concepts before we get the deadlines that come in, saying you've got 2 weeks to get this done. Can you get it? Can you make it happen? Alrighty, in consideration of time, I'm going to keep hustling on. We are majority way through, but in outcome 3, we're looking just a little bit at the collaboration side. So this is governance not equaling bureaucracy, but equaling rhythm. Guardrails keeping trust, creativity, and compliance in tune. So the goal being harmony, not control, essentially. Governance often gets a bad reputation as a policy department, like HR can get a bad reputation of that as well at times. But if they play that role, then hey, they deserve it. But anyway, the blockers, and for blockers and paperwork, but in orchestration terms, governance is a tempo control. It exists for one core reason that without a metronome, even the best musicians drift apart. In creative and AI driven work, governance is what keeps trust, tempo, and truth aligned. So, trust between clients, creatives, and the digital systems that now do the work. Tempo, keeping work flowing efficiently without rushing into ethical or creative mistakes. And truth, ensuring that outputs we deliver still reflect human meaning and brand authenticity. So governance isn't about slowing down change. It's about keeping creativity from descending into chaos. When done right, it tends to be invisible. You don't feel it, but you notice its absence almost immediately, like an orchestra with no conductor keeping time. All right, so guardrails of creative governance. Let's say we're keeping this at very high level, rather simple level, but essentially, I'd say that there's if governance is the metronome, three guardrails that apply to that most are first, ethical clarity. We've got to be transparent about where and how digital intelligence is participating in our workflows. It's not enough to say AI helped. Okay, we need to ensure consent, safety, and brand integrity through clarity. Number two, experiential quality. Our audiences experiences outputs emotionally, not technically. So the question isn't, was it AI generated, but did it move me? If we lose the spark, then we've lost the orchestra's purpose. And thirdly, effectiveness of calibration. So this measures both the art and the science, the speed, consistency, engagement, bias, and brand tone. Governance existing to retune, not to reprimand. When used correctly or used judiciously, these guardrails shouldn't restrict creativity, but they should enable it to scale safely without losing soul. All right, and a little bit of activity on this one. I'm going to give you a small case study, and I'm going to ask you to assess which of the guardrails you would strengthen first and why. So your agency has just launched an AI-assisted campaign, performing too well. Oh no, engagement is 400% higher than forecast. You learn some of the assets have used AI-generated imagery that mimics a real influencer without permissions, though. So, which of these guardrails would you strengthen first and why? Would you start by focusing on ethical, experiential, or effectiveness of the calibration? I'm looking to the chat, looking for a 1, 2, or 3. You know, I won't move on until I get at least one number thrown my way. Oh, okay. Kinga, thank you. And Ailish, thank you. Ailish is back again, and you're both on 3, effectiveness calibration. I'd love to bring you on mic to hear exactly why you're thinking what you're thinking, but with 4 minutes left before the end of the presentation, I think we're going to be struggling on that one. Okay, so 3 effectiveness calibration metrics should trigger human review next time. Good place to start, basically preempting this happening again. All righty. Keep these in consideration, though, because they become more and more relevant to the work we're doing as digital intelligence and human intelligence merge. All right, and I think this is my final slide, but we've kind of whistle-stopped through. It's been relatively intense for some, I guess. But anyway, the final encore, the art of workforce orchestration. When human and digital intelligences play in harmony, it's a siren song of the future we hear. Quoting myself. I don't know how, yeah, anyway, at least I don't have to attribute it other than say it was me. And that line, the siren song of the future, is very deliberate. And I'd say that it's because the sound of progress is beautiful, but it's also seductive. It calls us forward, and sometimes faster than our ethics, governance, or readiness can actually follow. The role of leaders or conductors is not to silence the song, it's to guide it, to ensure that harmony holds even as new instruments are brought to join the orchestra. So the work ahead isn't about resisting AI or even about adopting it. It's about orchestrating it. That's the future of workforce planning: deliberate, dynamic, and still deeply human. We've traveled through three movements today: capability, where we learned that the future isn't about replacing human skill, but expanding it through new forms of intelligence and combinations of intelligence. We looked at capacity, the practical side, where build, borrow, buy, bot can help us turn creative ambition into sustainable delivery. And we've looked at governance or collaboration, I think I've labeled it, the rhythm section that tries to keep our work ethical, resonant, and effective. So the art of workforce planning in the AI era isn't administration, it's orchestration. And you're not just HR leaders or strategists or business leaders or creatives, you are conductors of capability. That's the ideal vision we're looking for. The challenge from here: go back to your orchestras, retune just one section, rewrite one movement, look at one workflow as done, reimagine that as a AI native workflow, and test it out, experiment, hypothesize, see how the harmony improves, use data to allow yourself to reiterate. Because from my perspective and from what I'm seeing across the world at workforce planning, the future of work isn't built, it's conducted.
Thank you, Adam. I think we're going to have to wrap it up there because we've got 1 minute left. And I know I love the fact we did Q&A throughout, didn't we? So I think we have got one more question, but I think we're just going to have to finish it there. Do you mind going on to the next slide? I think there's a QR code somewhere.
Yeah, the wrapping up. Oh, there you go.
Oh, looks a
A little
tad.
bit of blur on the text there, but I think the QR code looks solid.
But just to say before we wrap it up that we specialise in helping agencies turn AI transformation into action, and we'd love to have a conversation with you about that. And if you click on the QR code, just fill in your details to book a call with one of our teams, so we can let you know how we build skills and capability in AI at kind of leadership and all levels of your agency. So yes, get in touch with us to find out more. And thank you so much for your time and attention. Adam, thank you so much. So much food for thought. I feel like I've got a small headache. But it was wonderful. There was so many questions. And yeah, I think we're just getting some little feedback in the chat. So thank you, everyone, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody, for your attendance and your attention. Most appreciated. Edify, wonderful work you're doing. Like, really appreciate the collaboration with you folks. Just start small. Just the concepts are there. They're complicated. They're complex. Start small. Start heading in that direction. Start thinking this through, because the world of work is transforming around us.
Thank you so much.